Hey folks, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Let's begin to get a feel now for the astrology of 2019. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the major highlights, the major transits of 2019, the major configurations of energy, and the themes that we're going to be navigating together as a collective. So we're going to chat for a bit. This will be a longer video. In fact, we're going to do it in two parts, so get comfy, get some tea, get some juice, get some water, whatever you need to be comfortable so that we can spend some time together reflecting on where we're going in 2019. So you might want to listen to this podcast style. Sometimes I like to listen to videos when I'm doing chores around the house. So this is the astrology of 2019. So 2019 is really an interesting year. 2019 is essentially sandwiched between these two solar eclipses in Capricorn. The first one happening on January 6th at 15 degrees of Capricorn, and the second one happening on December 26th at 4 degrees of Capricorn. So 2019 is sandwiched between these solar eclipses in Capricorn happening at the beginning and at the end of the year. So not only do we have these solar eclipses, but we have these massive constellations of Capricornian energy, these massive concentrations of Capricorn energy. So with the first solar eclipse in January 2019, we have a lineup of Mercury, Saturn, the Sun, and the Moon, and Pluto in Capricorn, and of course, the south node of the Moon. It's an eclipse. So I'm dedicating another video to dig down into that first solar eclipse in January of 2019, so you'll be able to refer to that. And we will close out 2019 with another constellation or lineup of Capricorn energy. But at the end of 2019, on that eclipse, at the end of the year in December, we will have the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, the South Node, and we have Saturn applying to a conjunction with Pluto. So by that time in December of 2019, we will have Jupiter in Capricorn along with Saturn and Pluto amplifying the Capricorn energy throughout the collective. So Jupiter is entering the mix here, and of course we will flesh that out in depth later on, but for now we're getting a bird's eye view. Okay, so what 2019 is doing is focusing our attention on the Cancer-Capricorn axis. As I've been saying, this axis is especially important within the collective consciousness, as the lunar nodes, the nodes of the moon, are in these signs, and the nodes would have changed signs into Cancer, Capricorn, North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn in November of 2018. So it's not just that the nodes of the moon are in these signs, but that we have Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, which is where the South Node is. So essentially, we are dealing with unresolved collective karmic energy around the sign principle of Capricorn, and how we have expressed that sign principle throughout the human collective consciousness. So Pluto in Capricorn in 2019 is continuing to demand that we face the shadow of Capricornian systems and structures, government, political, institutional. So Pluto will continue to bring out the shadow aspects of this. Pluto unearths. It's an energy that unearths things. So Pluto will continue to bring out the shadow of this and highlight lessons around the use of power, the right use of power. So Saturn in Capricorn is demanding that we face the spiritual, evolutionary, and karmic consequences of our misaligned actions in the domain of our collective administrative systems and structures. So in 2019, it's not just that Saturn and Pluto are in Capricorn, but that throughout 2019 they conjunct the south node of the moon. So Saturn dances in a conjunction with the Capricorn south node from April to about September or October of 2019. So the exact conjunctions of Saturn and the south node take place on April 30, 2019, July 4, and on September 28. So we also have, folks, Pluto in Capricorn also conjuncting the south node in April. So in April 2019, both Saturn and Pluto make a conjunction with the Capricorn south node. Important. Now, obviously, because the nodes are opposite points, they're opposite each other, it means that Saturn and Pluto are conjuncting the south node, but also opposing the north node in Cancer. So then, the emphasis in terms of the unresolved karmic energy of Capricorn throughout the collective is extremely strong. So we can expect hard lessons, evolutionary and karmic chickens coming home to roost as Saturn and Pluto engage the nodal axis. So again, Saturn as an evolutionary catalyst and energy demands that as a collective we face the consequences of our misaligned actions, especially as it relates to the structures that underpin society, policies, government, administration, banking, finance. And Pluto, like we said, is dredging up the shadow and highlighting where we have been misaligned in terms of the use, or we should say the abuse, of power. So no doubt, in 2019, we're going to be seeing themes of corruption, people having to face the consequences of their corrupt or nefarious activity. And no doubt, we will be seeing too, in heightened ways, those in power facing the consequences of abuse or untruthfulness. So Saturn and Pluto at the Capricorn South Node is an energy that can be very ruthless and even cruel, let's say, in terms of undercutting people and institutions in power where they are misaligned out of spiritual integrity. So at the same time, though, Saturn and Pluto opposite the south node, opposite the north node in Cancer, I should say, really speaks to the karmic necessity we have at this time to develop with integrity the qualities of Cancer. So, as I've said, the north node in Cancer is what we look to, the energy that we need to collectively embrace, which is going to act, it's going to act as a sort of corrective mechanism to the shadows of the Capricorn energy within the collective. So Cancer shows us the way forward. So the qualities of Cancer are showing us the kinds of qualities that we need to embody as a collective to get us through the karmic corridor of the next 2 years. So with Pluto opposite the Cancer North Node, it is Cancerian power that we need to now use to remedy the shadows of Capricorn. So the power of emotional ties and kinship bonds, the power of care and nurturance, emotional support and sympathetic and empathetic rapport, versus where we have lost our way in the shadows of the Capricorn archetype, lack of care and concern, coldness, rigidity, rigid boundaries, excessive control, superiority complexes, abdication of responsibility, and hierarchical and top-down authoritarianism. So we also have with that covert manipulation by institutions, again, abuse of power, especially by the agents of the state, Pluto in Capricorn. As I've said in previous content here on the channel, the Cancer North Node at this time during this karmic corridor is asking us to develop a more archetypally feminine mode of consciousness, the energy of the mother, Cancerian energy, where we see the planet as a living home for the human tribe or family. So it's this type of Cancerian consciousness that will allow us to more successfully navigate this karmic juncture of the South Node in Capricorn along with Saturn and Pluto. So yes, we are beginning the year with this solar eclipse new moon at 15 degrees of Capricorn. So if you have the sun or moon in your chart around this degree, this is no doubt going to be an energy that sows the seeds of a very important new beginning for you. So solar eclipses, more so in my observation than lunar eclipses, are very powerful in their personal effects when they stimulate important parts of the chart, especially the sun and the moon by conjunction. So solar eclipses are really new moons on steroids, and they herald extremely important new beginnings. So you want to pay attention to any significant placements that you may have around 15 degrees of Capricorn. Also be mindful too of important placements around 15 to 18 or so degrees of the cardinal signs. So for continuity, since we've been talking about Saturn and Pluto, we'll mention now that in 2019, we are again this year seeing overlapping retrograde periods of Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. Important. So again, they are working together. So I did a whole video on Saturn and Pluto retrograde together in 2018. The same themes apply, folks. So I would suggest also having a look at that video. So essentially, Saturn and Pluto are really working together in concert as they move toward a conjunction at the end of December 2019 into 2020, when the conjunction is exact, and the start of a new synodic cycle between Saturn and Pluto. So on April 24, Pluto stations retrograde and is retrograde until October 3. And then 6 days after Pluto goes retrograde, Saturn follows suit and is retrograde from April 30 until September 18. So for a 5-month period, both Saturn and Pluto are retrograde. So people with important placements at 13 to 23 degrees of Capricorn and of the other cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Cancer, are really up now for some testing by Saturn and Pluto. So the people with placements in the early degrees of Capricorn, they had their moment in 2018. And now it's time for the people with placements at 13 to 23 degrees, thereabouts, of the cardinal signs. It's now your turn. So in 2018, we had Saturn and Pluto retrograde from April to September. And we're seeing the picture again, this same picture in 2019. So as I've said before in previous content, and I really want to direct you to that Saturn-Pluto retrograde video, with Saturn in its home sign, the whole of humanity is in the middle of a very significant Saturn transit. And I think I called it back then adulting for the collective. So the retrograde periods now are about slow testing and refining, forcing us to personally and collectively develop more integrity, more endurance, more resilience, and more inner power. Inner power. Very important as we think about how Saturn and Pluto operate together. So as Saturn and Pluto force restructuring and decomposition of systems and structures on the outer level, the evolutionary implication, or let's say the evolutionary invitation to humanity, is to restore our sense of inner power, to reclaim it, and to not give our power away mindlessly to all sorts of institutions and their policies. Yes? So with all the decomposition that's occurring, the invitation on the karmic collective level with these retrograde periods of Saturn and Pluto is to shore up and to buttress and reclaim our spiritual adulthood. So Capricorn is the sign of the adult. Yes. So where have we given away our power, and where we are invested in external representations of power to neglect the inner spiritual force and power of the dignified human being? That's up for us to look at. So on a collective level then, we are seeing the decomposition of institutions in which we have placed a lot of power and authority, because we are now facing, let's say, our karmic responsibility to claim our power as a species. So we're seeing the breakdown of these historically powerful institutions as the invitation for us now to claim and restore our own inner power. Yeah. And many of you, especially those of you who are drawn to this channel and to this type of content, you are very quietly and silently reclaiming your power and demonstrating this in energetic form as a template for the rest of us to follow. So this is your contribution to the collective and your, let's say, your planetary assignment. When you take responsibility for your reality, when you say no to things that undercut or undermine your dignity and your power, you demonstrate a way forward for all of us. So many of you are doing that quietly, no fuss, no muss, and you're not waving some kind of a flag, but you are gracefully and impeccably moving through your own challenges and making an internal decision that these challenges are going to elevate you rather than victimize you. That's inner power. So in making a private decision that you're going to extract the medicine from the challenges that you face, you do a lot. And thank you for the grace of your spirit. And it's not about being perfect, but it's how you meet the challenges. So thank you for doing that for all of us here. So Saturn and Pluto retrograde means that these planets are demanding a lot from us personally and collectively. So in 2019, the part of the chart, of your chart, from 13 to 23 degrees of Capricorn and 13 to 23 degrees of the cardinal signs in general, Aries, Libra, Cancer, this is where house cleaning is taking place. This is where a lot is being demanded of you. The combined retrograde energies of Saturn and Pluto are unrelenting and demanding the very best of you. So as Saturn and Pluto traverse these degrees in your chart, 13 to 23 degrees, first direct, then retrograde, and then direct again. If you allow it, you are being elevated into new heights of mastery, of power, of accomplishment, of achievement and skill. But Saturn and Pluto, and with Saturn and Pluto retrograde, there are no shortcuts, people. So with Saturn and Pluto retrograde, there is tremendous opportunity for elevation, but you have to earn it. You have to qualify for it through your own dignity and impeccability and integrity. That's what's demanded of you. All right, so we start the year off with the solar eclipse in Capricorn on January 6th, like we said. And we also have 4 other eclipses which are going to be taking place. And we will talk about those in much more detail as 2019 progresses. So after the eclipse on January 6th, the next eclipse is at 0 degrees of Leo. And we have a full moon lunar eclipse in Leo on January 21, 2019. So after this, we transition fully to eclipses along the Cancer Capricorn axis. So we could see that eclipse in Leo as the completion of the evolutionary journey that we had as the North Node was in Leo. We could see that full moon lunar eclipse as the completion, the tying up of that evolutionary juncture there with the North Node in Leo. So we're coming out of the nodes in Leo Aquarius and obviously out of eclipses in those signs. So the next eclipse after that is on July 2, a new moon solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Cancer. So people with important placements at around 10 to 13 degrees of the cardinal signs, this eclipse is highlighting you. And that is followed by a full moon lunar eclipse, another lunar eclipse at 24 degrees of Capricorn on July 16. And we will have much to talk about with that eclipse. And as usual, I will be unpacking that here on the channel for you guys. And the final eclipse of 2019, as we said, is on December 26. So we close out the year, like we said, with another new moon solar eclipse in Capricorn at 4 degrees of the sign and conjunct Jupiter in Capricorn. So by that time, Jupiter is in Capricorn. So a massive constellation of Capricorn energy. So we've tied up then the Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn, Pluto signatures for the year. And we've said a lot already. So you may want to take some time to allow all of this to kind of just seep in. So when you're ready, you can join me in the next video for part 2. So thanks for watching and see you in the next video.